down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey, that's me. How's everybody doing? It is Wednesday night and it is TogChat, which means for the next hour or some, I'm going to be your host and we're going to talk about all things photography. Thanks for stopping by, gang. It's great to see you guys. James is here. Michael's here all the way from China. Very cool. Martin's here looking for his answer about good psychology references. Sawad's here. Gerald. Sven's here. Christopher, gang. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend an evening with me, talk about photography. So while we are waiting for folks to show up and get themselves situated, let's go ahead and take care of some of our business. So of course, as always, please do me a favor. Thumbs up. Only takes a second, helps more people find the video, more people to find the video, the longer we get to do these, right? Follow me on social media if you're not doing it already. Please make sure Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, those are the places where I'm the most active. It's always appreciated. And of course, as you're showing up, check in, let me know you're here, let me know where you're from. It's always great to see who's here and where everybody's tuning in from. So as you guys know, we've been doing 2 contests now for about a month, and they're going well. We're going to keep them going. So the first one is we've been doing the TOGSTUFF giveaway. We had a really big deal of a prize this week. It was given to us by the folks at Interfit. It was one of their Studio Essentials 200 watt second strobes with an umbrella kit. And our winner of that flash this week comes to us from Music City, USA, Nashville, and that is Brandon Taylor. So Brandon Taylor is the winner of the Studio Essentials 200 watt second flash umbrella kit. Sells for about $119.99, okay? And really awesome light. I got to see these out in Las Vegas at WPPI. The cool part of it is Interfit, similar to Godox, is building system flashes, which means that the controllers for this flash work with the Honey Badgers, which are the ones that I use. They work with the Interfit S1s, the S1As. So definitely it's a great starter flash for somebody that's just getting into lighting, and it's a great add-on flash for somebody that needs an additional strobe to add into their system. And at 200 watt seconds, not bad at all. So you're asking what's coming up next week, right? Next week's prize, we have from PhotoFlex, the PhotoFlex Speedome. This is a new product from PhotoFlex, and I'll show it to you in a second. This is a 28-inch collapsible softbox kit that's good for speed lights and LED lighting. Sells for $149.95 online. I'm going to go ahead and switch my browser over here, and we'll get rid of that. And let me bring up the Speedome page. So here it is. So this is kind of cool. Comes with a little kit. So you see it's got the portable carry bag with a nice shoulder strap. This thing is designed to hold up to 4 speed lights. 3 in a practical sense. Now I know that seems kind of weird, right? But it's actually got 4 slots. You can't see the one here in the picture. It's basically closed off. But if you were to mount it differently, you could actually get 4 in there. But the other cool feature is that in the middle, it actually has a light socket. And if you look close on the back there, let me go back to that back one, you can plug an AC cord in, which comes with it, and add an LED light to this. So you can essentially have a 28-inch square softbox, use it with speed lights. It gives you the ability to put an LED light in and use that LED light as a modeling light, or you can simply use it as an LED video light, okay? So that's our prize for next week. Make sure that you visit tog.chat/win. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to post the link into the chat window here for you guys, okay? Whoops, and that's not going to work there, guys. Let me get all of it. Sorry. I missed the H. The H is kind of important there. So let's get that H in here. There we go. Use the second one, not the first one. Let me get rid of that. There we go. We'll get rid of that first one. Okay, so there's the URL so that you can enter to win the 28-inch Speedome. And last piece of business, we're filling up now, man. A lot of people in here, so this is great. So our last piece of business, and then we'll get into the questions. And by the way, if you guys have questions for me, start typing, because I actually don't have a whole lot lined up tonight. So you know, we could get desperate and I could be like singing and dancing, and that's not going to be a good thing. So please, like, load in some questions there, and I will do my best to answer your questions for you, okay? But as you know, the good folks at PhotoFlex have also been sponsoring the PhotoFlex Share Your Lighting contest and giving away really, really good prizes for us each week. So this week, we have a winner, Mark Dolce from Staten Island, New York, with a really, really adorable puppy picture. How can you not go wrong with a puppy picture, right? So the idea behind the scenes, or the Share Your Lighting contest is to show us your finished picture, but also how you lit the photograph. And here we can see Mark set up in the studio where he's got his background. He used red gels to get that red, a reflector on camera right, studio strobe on camera left, just to give you some of the background behind. James, man, thank you so much for your super chat. I will answer that tethering question for you in detail in just a minute, okay? So some of the particulars on Mark's shot here. He shot this with an APS-C camera. It's a Canon T6S. Used a 24 to 70 millimeter lens. His strobes are Neewer monolights. His octabox that you see there is a 32-inch octabox. And basically, his daughter wanted some pictures of her new puppy, Boomer. So, hey, you know, when the daughter says, I want pictures, Dad, you do pictures, Dad, right? So his goal, obviously, was to get a nice high-res shot of the dog with good catch lights, proper lighting, different gels, and it was really just for practice. So overall, Mark is very happy with the shot. I would have to say that he did a great job with the shot. Congratulations, Mark. Mark's also a member of my Facebook group, and this shot was originally posted in the Facebook group, but definitely did a great job there. And next week's Share Your Lighting contest, let me just slide down here so I can see it. So next week, actually, we got an interesting little product, and I should have brought it up on my browser here, and I didn't. So let me get it for you. So first, I'm going to give you the link so that you can enter the Share Your Lighting contest. And by the way, these links, they're in the chat window if you're watching later, but they're also in the description underneath the video. So you can get to them either way, okay? For those of you who are live, the chat window is easiest. If you're watching this recorded, you can click either in the chat window because now it shows with your video, or you can click in the description. But the prize next week, and you guys will just have to bear with me a second here, and I'm going to grab this so I can show it to you because I missed a link here. So let's see if I can find it. And of course, it's not showing up on a Google search. That's not good. So you know what, guys? I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to describe it to you. So the prize next week, it's by a company called DLC, which is a photography company that's been around for a very, very, very long time. In fact, here, I know how I can find this here. Boy, isn't this embarrassing, right? I'm supposed to have this information, and I forgot. So DLC is Dotline Corporation, and it's coming. The page is loading right now. Oh, I see good questions, guys. Keep those questions coming, okay? So this gadget is called a Stowaway Instagear case. Sells for $100, okay? And basically what this is, it's an insert that fits into a suitcase, and it turns your suitcase into a camera case, which is like really, really awesome. So let me get this up on the page. Let me bring you guys the web browser here. And please tell me they have a picture. So they don't have a picture on their web. There it is. Okay, let's see if we can get a larger image. So basically what the prize is here, and of course it's not going to show. There we go. Are you guys able to see that? You are not able to see that. Hang on here. Wow. Crash, and that's not going to do it either. So you know what, gang? I apologize. Basically, it's the insert piece. It's not the whole case that you see there. Check my social media. I'll post links on it tonight. I am terribly embarrassed that I did not have this loaded up for you because I think it's actually really cool. In fact, I'm probably going to buy one. Basically, it's designed for a standard overhead-sized travel bag. You know, like the largest size that you can put up in the overheads on a plane. It's just the padded insert with the Velcro movable pieces, so you basically can customize it. So I wouldn't recommend like putting your cameras in this, putting it in a suitcase and then putting it in the hold of the plane. But for carrying gear onto the plane and not wanting to have to buy a overhead sized camera bag, but if you're going on, a trip or vacation, or even for that matter, if you can fit all your gear in a smaller shoulder bag and then you want to carry some lighting gear that without checking it, these are actually a great concept, okay? So that will be the prize for this week's Share Your Lighting contest. So remember, to enter the Share Your Lighting contest, all you have to do is submit 2 pictures to the link that I posted in the chat window there. The first picture is your finished shot. The second picture is behind the scenes. How did you do it? Show us your lighting. And here's the cool part. The folks at PhotoFlex are sponsoring this contest. They want you to know about their gear, but here's what's neat. You can use any gear in your pictures. You do not have to take the photographs with PhotoFlex gear, which is simply awesome. So great prize, great sponsorship. Make sure you guys at least check out PhotoFlex. And I think we are ready to go ahead and get into some questions now. All right. So let me just clear this off my screen. And I've got a question left over from last week. So I want to tackle this one first. And then, James, I'm all yours on the tethering. Last week, Martin asked me about resources for learning about cognitive psychology, because you guys hear me talk a lot about cognitive psychology and how it impacts the things that we do in photography, why we take bad pictures, why we miss details, how it is actually kind of an obstacle, etc. Okay, so I checked with the expert, my expert, who happens to be my wife, and Martin, her first response, it was kind of the classic college professor response, was there really aren't any popular kind of layman's books on the subject matter, but there are tons of textbooks. So if you are so inclined, first of all, to look for a textbook that is going to cover a lot of this material, you want to look for a textbook that is all about sensation and perception. So obviously the stuff I talk about is less of the sensation side and more of the perception side, but the two are taught together. In fact, that's one of the courses that my wife teaches at her college, is sensation and perception. So what I did, Martin, and what I would encourage you to do is just simply do a Google search for resources for sensation and perception, or sensation and perception resources, and you'll actually find tons of stuff. I actually did a quick search earlier. Let me switch the screen over here, and I'll just show you. So I did a quick Google search on sensation and perception, came up with tons of stuff, and I just happened to click on like one of the first 2 that's there. So this is like an online course. If you go through the whole syllabus, I'll tell you very honestly, about 80% is completely irrelevant. However, a couple sections in, you will read all about the things that you hear me talk about. You'll hear things about inattentional blindness, change blindness, the Gestalt principles. Those are all things, figure ground. Those are all things. Here's another one from Lumen, which is Introduction to Psychology. And again, part of it is sensation, which really has nothing to do at all, but the perception part, this particular article gets into a lot with the optical illusion aspect, because a lot of the perception stuff that causes this issue, some people consider them optical illusions. That's kind of, shall we say, the layman's terms for, what happens in those things. So that's going to be your best bet. In terms of research, or if you go further down in that Google search, you will actually start to see listing after listing after listing for sensation and perception textbooks. And that will allow you, if you're so inclined and you kind of really want to dig deep, to go that route. The other thing that you can do, in fact, I'm going to paste 2 of the terms here that are 2 of the big ones that I talk about a lot. These 2 terms, inattentional blindness and change blindness, if you both Google them, or even here on YouTube, if you type those search terms into the search box in YouTube, you'll actually find some really interesting videos that kind of demonstrate it and describe it. And in particular for inattentional blindness, there are some really cool video tests that you can take that will show up when I do my there we go. When I do my talks on the subject, I actually have a couple videos that I will play for the group, and essentially it's a test to kind of prove the point that as humans we really, really do struggle with a lot of these things. So, okay, so that being said, James has a super chat question here, so that's an important one. And guys, I will do my best to answer everybody's questions tonight. You know I hardly ever finish on time, but if for any reason you are afraid that I'm not going to get to your question or it's super, super important, you need to make sure you get an answer, don't hesitate. That little $ down on the left-hand bottom or left-hand corner of your chat window, that will allow you to do a super chat. You can do it anywhere from $1 up, and that's all you got to do. I will make sure that any super chats that come in, I will answer your questions for sure. Okay? All right, so James has a question for us here. Let me just get my questions back up on the screen. And he's new to tethering, and he would like to know if the case air is worth its use, or are cables better? All right. So it depends, James. You got to give me a little bit more information. So, I mean, you guys know that Tether Tools is one of my sponsors, and I love their stuff. I have used the case air. I do not own one. In fact, if I'd wanted one, Tether Tools would have gladly given it to me. But for me, I don't think that I would have enough use for it, especially when I was using, was a Nikon user. So I think one of the big decisions that's going to come into play here, and James, I want you to give me a little bit more feedback. So number one, I want to know what kind of camera you're using. And number two, I want to know what kind of stuff you're shooting. Give me a little context, because that's going to help me narrow it down. But while I'm waiting for your answer, let me fill in some background information. Wi-Fi in general is not ready yet. And I shouldn't say the Wi-Fi is not ready, but I should say camera technology isn't really ready to use Wi-Fi to transfer files at a space, or a speed, I should say, that satisfies me. I like the immediacy. In fact, you guys have heard me talk a lot about the idea that Lightroom is painfully slow in terms of tethering. That's why for years I used Capture One when I was a Nikon shooter. Now that I'm an Olympus shooter, the bonus is, and this kind of sounds crazy, so follow along, I actually have to use one more piece of software, but it's actually a ton faster, like a ton faster. So Capture One supports Olympus files. Ronaldo, how you doing? So Capture One supports Olympus files, but it doesn't support Olympus tethering. Olympus has their own software called Olympus Capture. It is lightning fast, and I mean wicked fast. So the cool part is, when I'm shooting tether with my Olympus, click, poof, it's on the screen. And that's shooting RAW. That's even if I have my camera set to do RAW and JPEG, and save to the camera and save to the computer hard drive, poof, it's there. So all I do is, I still open up Capture One, and I set a hot folder in Capture One. So I'm still going through all the same processes. I'm just not using Capture One for the tether. But it's wicked fast. So for the case air, the challenge is it's still basically a Wi-Fi transfer. So it's a little bit slower, okay? So depending on what you're shooting, so James here, he's a Nikon shooter, full frame and mostly studio work. Okay, so really depends on what you're shooting, James, and what your patience level is. That's what I'm going to tell you. I will say that I found the capture, or the case air, excuse me, to be super simple, really reliable, as quick as pretty much anything that's out there in the wireless space, okay? Nate, does my Tether laptop have an SSD? I do not use an SSD that's built into the drive. I use a small SSD that's an external, but that's not impacting the render rate in terms of downloading and me seeing it, okay? I've used this same setup that I'm talking about, the Olympus Capture, the Capture One, with USB 3 drives, and had, equally as good results. But I've actually only been using the SSD, the external SSD now for probably a month and a half. It's relatively new. So, you know, I think you're going to find, James, that the Case Air is as fast as anything that's out there when you're dealing wireless. But the simple element is wireless is not as fast. So really what it comes down to, I guess my recommendation would be, if you don't find that you are the impatient type, which I'm the impatient type. Like, I want that file right away. I want to see it. If you don't find that you are the impatient type, and especially if you find from a priority standpoint more that you don't want to use a tripod and you want to be able to move around without being encumbered by wires, then I would say of all the products that are on the market, Case Air, 100% of the way, it's an absolutely awesome tool. But obviously the trade-off is you're not tethered, you know, via cable, so you've got a little bit of a slower transfer. So I hope that helps, James. If there's more to your question or something more specific you're looking for, type it in, and I will definitely do my best to answer it for you there. Okay. Well, we still got a lot of people showing up tonight. This is cool, gang. That's all right. I'm glad you could make it. Not a problem. Just don't be late again, but it's okay. I'm glad you made it. So, let's see. Jason Madden Photography. Sorry you're late. It's okay. I'd love to know your thoughts on the theory and ideal that gear doesn't matter, as story will always be king. Wow. Okay. So, let me give you the short answer first, Jason, because I literally, this is one of these that I could go on a rant about. I've got some feelings and thoughts that are kind of rather controversial about some things that are going on in the industry these days, and I'm not really ready to go rip on those right yet. Soon. Bottom line, I agree with the ideal that you have expressed, like wholeheartedly agree with the ideal. I wouldn't use the word story. I would use the word emotion. Okay, it's the connection. If the end user connects to the image, they don't care what the gear was. They don't care how it was done. They simply don't. You guys know I switched to Olympus, 4 months ago now, almost 5 months ago. I haven't had anybody other than photographers look at my pictures and say, what kind of camera did you use? You know, usually, of course, the photographers are always, did you really change? Is this really done with an Olympus? Yeah, in fact, hey, benchmark, true story. I sold my very last Nikkor lens today. So I literally have 0 Nikkor gear left on the premises anywhere. So it's all been gone. The 20 millimeter was the last one to go. Just sold it today. It's out of here. So there's no Nikkor gear left at all. So, but yeah, James, I mean, the gear matters to photographers. I think gear is important when you understand it's a tool. Everybody has their favorite tools. You know, even if you talk to a carpenter, you know, different carpenters like one hammer over another. They like one brand drill or saw over another. For years, especially if you go back a couple decades when Sears Craftsman, you know, was such a big and trusted brand name. You know, I literally, I heard people argue in hardware stores about, you know, what brand of screwdriver was better and most durable and that kind of stuff. So it's a tool. That's what the camera is. So, you know, first and foremost, I think what's important with the gear is the photographer comfortable with the gear, and can it do the job that they need it to do? That's as far and as deep as the gear discussion goes for me. And that's pretty much what I teach in all my videos. Okay. You know, there's this other piece of it. We all like gear. Gear's fun, sure, right? But we need to separate those two in terms of the importance. So for me, yes, it's the story. I agree with you. Or I would phrase it as the emotional connection that people are going to make. That's ultimately what people care about. So let's see. Tanonix, did your first studio photography shoot the other day and it went really well. Recently bought a studio backdrop and lighting kit. Awesome. I'm glad the videos are helping, man. That's really, really good. So Jason Mann's got a follow-up here. Yes, exactly. I understand in certain situations gear does matter, but the story is what's important to people. And you're right. Emotion. Thanks for answering. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, but I was always taught that way too. Just to be fair, that's how I was taught when I was younger. That's always been, you know, a lot behind my motivation and my reasoning. So yeah, you know, Ian Robinson, rest in peace, Nikon. Hey, you know, listen, I obviously I hold no ill will towards Nikon. I used them for like 40 years, guys, almost 42 years. I do wish they'd kind of get their act together. The world's evolving, and think about evolution, right? So we all know how it worked out for the dinosaurs. Kind of didn't. And, Nikon and even Canon, Canon's talking a big game right now, and they've shown some little digital pieces, but both these companies, they gotta get their act together like soon, because, the world's evolving, and it's evolving right past them. And I will say straight up, I have zero regrets about my switch to Olympus. Well, that's a lie. I have one regret. I should have done it a lot sooner. I really should have. But I will say, and I say this sincerely, and I believe this, it would be devastating for the industry. And when I say industry, I don't necessarily mean equipment industry. I mean photography. It would be devastating if Nikon and Canon disappeared at this point, or if they went under. It would not be a good thing. And I don't just mean because a lot of people would have gear where they'd have to change systems and that kind of stuff. That's actually not what I mean. I mean in terms of the research and development that these companies do. Even though they haven't been showing it on the outside, they are responsible for a lot of the technological advances. Now, we have the luxury, the technology has advanced to the point where that playing field is being leveled a little bit more. So there are smaller companies that are bringing forward really, really big, technology advances. But I do think it would be a really, really bad thing if either one of those companies, completely went away at this point. So, Deck luck. People need to stop watching the gear acquisition sensational gas YouTube channels. Yeah, if you keep watching and arguing over it, they'll continue to produce the gas garbage. I mean, hey, it is what it is. One of the things I learned, guys, if you've been following me for a while, there was a time period about a year ago where I introduced a phrase. It had never been used before. There's no documented use of it. And I started using it rather aggressively. And that phrase was geartographer. If you've been paying attention, I don't use the phrase as much anymore. And I'll tell you why, because there's something that I learned in the process. I started using the phrase because I meant it to be kind of an insult. It was meant to basically try and get people to wake up and pay attention to the idea that they were putting too much emphasis and worrying too much about gear and not enough about actual photography. And sure enough, some people really kind of got their backs up against the wall over that. And here's what I learned though, as I've had the chance to go out and meet people and do talks and teach workshops and lectures and my travels, there is a category of photographers that their true pleasure actually is the gear. It's not the creativity. In fact, creativity is not even a factor for them. They like to take pictures and they want to reproduce things they see, but they don't consider themselves creative in many cases, but they derive great pleasure from the toys. And you know what? That's okay. But I never considered that. I simply didn't. So I've been very careful of late. If you've noticed when the word geartographer comes up, is I try to frame it a little bit better because I really did mean it to be something that would get people to stop and think. But the people that I want to stop and think are the people that are really trying to become great creative photographers, but yet their focus is on their gear. Those are the people that I really wanted to, kind of wake up and pay attention. But there's a substantial category of people that they love the gear. And that's really where they derive their pleasure from. So, I think, Deck made the comment about, stop watching the YouTube channels that are all about gear. I think the problem is it's not so much the channels. I mean, one of the things we have to be honest, it's just like television, right? If nobody watches, they're either going to stop making them or they're going to change what they're making. Okay. So, technically, you guys hold the power, right? And so let's be fair. There are a lot more people watching those gear channels than are watching me. So, there's something there. It doesn't make the gear channels bad. It's just that it's unfortunate. Some people, their goals may be over here, but they don't realize that in order to get over here, they've got to stop getting so deep into the gear that they're not really learning the important stuff. And that's not really the fault of the channels, but yeah, I mean, it's a problem. It's an issue. So Tenonix, what monitor do you use to edit with? Also, how do you get true color accuracy? So I use the Spider system for my color calibration. That's SPYDER. I am working on currently an iMac 4K machine. It's a 31-inch Apple 4K iMac. And I'm using a Samsung, and I'll be doggone if I remember the model number, but it's not the most expensive monitor in the world. It's Jason Madden. Thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. The Samsung monitor is basically it's a 4K monitor that it's my kind of other monitor. So all of my retouching and video editing comes up on this screen, which is the iMac. Both screens are calibrated, but the Samsung, it's literally, for me, I don't see the value in spending like another $1,000 to $1,200 for the standalone monitor to have two monitors that are like, oh my God, highest resolution ever. No, it's like, this is a sweet little monitor. I got it for under $500. If you guys really want to know the model number of it, I promise I'll have it for you next week, and I'll tell you the model number, but I'm not going to flip it around right now. But again, it's my auxiliary monitor that's on this machine, so I don't need it to be, quite the same resolution. Some people that would drive them nuts. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't bother me at all, because if I'm retouching, it's on here. It's never happening on this machine at all. Okay, so. Al B, when you're using a speedlight in a softbox, how important is it to properly zoom the flash wide or narrow? I keep forgetting, but can't see much difference. It's a Lumira Pro LP180 and a 24-inch softbox. Well, actually, Al, I just did a series of pictures yesterday that will demonstrate that for you. It's kind of really, really important if we're going to do it by the book. Shall we say it that way? Speed lights are a very, very small light source, and they basically are usually going to be within like 12 to 18 inches from the front baffle of a softbox, 24 at the most, depending on the softbox. That means the light doesn't have a lot of time to spread. So two things about using a speed light in a softbox. My recommendation is that you always use a softbox that has an inner baffle when you're going to use a speed light, always. Without it, hands down, you will get a hot spot in the front diffuser. Now, are you going to see that as a result in your image? As long as you are placing the softbox at an appropriate distance from the subject, and when I say appropriate distance, I would say 3 to 6 feet or more, then no, you are not going to realize that that hot spot is there in your finished image. If you wind up using that softbox really close to your subject, couple things will happen. One, you could literally notice that there's essentially a hot spot in your lighting. And two, you could also notice that you're going to get a very rapid light fall off as you go from like top to bottom in the image. Mark Dolce, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate it. So I really appreciate the super chat, man. And great picture. I love the picture. So Al, yeah, I mean, I would say the answer to your question, it's something that I call systematizing. There are certain things in your photography habits that you should systematize. In other words, they should be a ritual. So to give you an example, always shoot at your base ISO unless you have a legitimate need to do higher. So I'm not saying you can never raise your ISO, but I'm just saying if you don't need to shoot at ISO 400, why would you not then shoot at the base ISO, which is going to be a higher quality? So these are things that you systematize. So always shoot at your base ISO unless you have a need to do otherwise. Never use a shutter speed that is slower than the focal length of your lens unless you have an overwhelming need or it's the only way you're going to get the shot. Always set your speed light at its widest zoom setting when you're going to put it into a softbox. Those are things that, for me, I call them systematizing habits. I hate to use the word rules. You guys know that. I talk about not using rules. But when I talk about no rules, that's on the creative side of photography. When it comes to the physics things and the science things, they're not really debatable. This kind of falls in the middle. It's not a rule of physics that you're going to ruin your picture, but it's a really good idea to systematize that kind of stuff. So the inner baffle, definitely very, very helpful, but best rule of thumb, set it as wide as setting. It's a good habit to get into. Tom Kazuba, it feels like Canon is panicking due to Sony's A7 III being $1999. Now Canon is leaking to rumor sites about their upcoming full-frame mirrorless. You know these companies. Is this a smokescreen from Canon? Ian, Sony seems unstoppable. They got so much momentum. So, right now, yeah, Sony's got a ton of momentum. Let's face it. Sony has done all the right things. Obviously, for a while there, people had it in their heads that I hated Sony. I've got nothing against Sony. Remember, I tried them out for a year. At the time, they didn't have a lot of lenses. I'm still to this day not convinced that Sony is committed to the long haul, which I know a lot of photographers will argue with me. It's my personal feeling, so just relax. I'm not trying to say don't buy Sony. You just heard me say Sony's doing all the right things. They literally are. So, Tom, I have no doubt that Canon is like working aggressively to get a full-frame mirrorless out. I have no doubt that Nikon is actually working aggressively. As much as I finally said, that's it, I'm tired of waiting, out of here, see ya, I have no doubt that they're working aggressively. These companies are not stupid. They have survived as long as they have because obviously there are intelligent people running the ship. Bottom line, and Canon has kind of admitted it, both the companies, Canon and Nikon, they were asleep at the wheel when this mirrorless technology came along, and they did not get ahead of it, which they should have. We completely understand, and we know that both companies, Canon and Nikon, they have legacy issues that they have to deal with. In other words, they've got all these lenses, they've got all this glass. So the challenge is that's a big switch, and think about it. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were the CEO of the company, while you want to be on the top of the heap, you've also got to worry about the fact that your company makes all their money over here, and now you're going to put out a line that's potentially going to compete with it. So when you do that, when you know you're going to put out a camera line that's going to compete with it, it better be doggone good, because whatever it takes from one side, you need to make sure that it fills it in over here and doesn't let people leave. Because the one thing we know for sure now, because of Sony's success, if Canon and Nikon don't get it right, they're going to lose and lose big. So, and believe me, just to be clear, gang, it's not just Sony that's winning in this mirrorless race. Okay, look at the sales numbers for Olympus. Look at the sales numbers for Panasonic, for Fuji. Yeah, Sony's getting all the attention, and Sony's, out there in the full frame race and all that. But all of these mirrorless companies are benefiting and thriving and growing at a rapid rate, and it's costing Nikon and Canon a lot of money. So I'm confident that it's coming, Tom. I don't think it's a smokescreen. I think the vagueness in their statements is simply a matter of they are scared to death. They need to get it right. Which of course doesn't help a Canon user, but I think that's where it's coming from. So, Reynaldo. So let's see here. As a fellow Olympus shooter, do you have a recipe for applying sharpening and noise reduction in post? Do you apply any noise reduction at base ISO? So, Reynaldo, thank you very much, man. I appreciate the super chat. So I don't. I've done very little. Actually, back up. I've done nothing with noise reduction so far with my EM1 Mark IIs. Keep in mind that 90% of what I shoot with them is in the studio. The weather is finally starting to turn here in the Northeast. And in fact, Friday this week, I've got my first outdoor shoot for the season scheduled. I made you guys the promise I'm going to be doing a lot of outdoor stuff this spring and this summer. So, we'll see if I'm finding any issues there, as we get into that. And I maybe have to bring my ISO up a little bit. But so far in the studio, I've had no reason to bring the ISO up. I finally have had a chance over the last week to really dig in with the Pen F and play with the Pen F, and that's been all like carry around natural light stuff. I took it up to New York with me Monday night, and I had about an hour to blow when I got up there before I had to go do my talk. So I spent some time walking around Tribeca, doing some interesting shots of buildings and just random stuff. I didn't run into problems. And I was shooting stuff that was up to 1,000 ISO. I don't have any problems with what I'm seeing in noise. And part of that is, I want to be clear, I'm old enough, unfortunately, that I remember film grain. And I missed, somewhere along the line, I missed the point where it became like this rule that a picture can't have texture of some kind in it. That there has to be no texture. It's got to be sterile. So the little bit of noise, if you will, that I'm seeing at the 1,000 ISO is not bothering me at all. Now, as far as sharpening, Ronaldo, I'm not doing anything different for sharpening with the Olympus than I did with the Nikon. So I do my sharpening as my last step, depending on where it's going for output. So in other words, I sharpen a little differently for print than I do for web. And my sharpening, for all the people that are like the hardcore, there's got to be a right or wrong answer. Cover your ears, because I'm going to make your head hurt, okay? My sharpening for like JPEGs to go online, the last step after I size the image, I simply use the unsharp mask at the default settings, dial it back to about 80% of those default settings. That's it. There's probably 1,000 variations that you could find YouTube videos on, or blog articles about how to best sharpen your images for web presentation or for print. So the bottom line is, you find the version that works for you, and you use it. I don't see the need or feel the need to do all these, crazy different steps. So literally, for years, I've just done a little bit of unsharp mask, and I continue to do the same thing with my Olympus files. One of the things that I think a lot of the full frame users miss out on. So for me, part of my motivation to go back to Olympus, gang, and I haven't talked about this. So let me give you food for thought, because this is going to be counterintuitive for some of you. So follow along, and I'll gladly share this in a video coming up soon. But part of my reasoning for looking at making this step, which some would say is a backward step. You were using a Nikon D810, it was full frame and had 36 megapixels, and now you're down at 20 megapixels and you're in a micro four thirds. Oh my God. You know what that means? That means I'm not killing myself with retouching anymore. That's what that means. At full frame with 36 megapixels, I was having to retouch every ounce of a person's face to take the texture out of it, especially doing my close-up beauty shots that I do. Now, I don't have near that much resolution. My retouching is so much faster, so much faster. And the beauty of it is, the M-Sweeco lenses, man, I'll tell you what, I'm not kidding, gang. Like, Olympus is not paying me. You are not going to find sharper lenses. You're just not, period. It is insane how sharp these lenses are. So, I'm not losing anything. And again, those of you that were in Las Vegas will vouch for it. Olympus had one of my beauty shots 8 feet by 6 feet on the back of their booth. You could count the eyelashes. Tack sharp, crisp as could be. So, yeah, I mean, the nice part of going backwards in the resolution is I've saved myself a ton of time in retouching. And remember, gang, I started in digital technology with the Nikon D1. What was that, like 2 megapixels? So I had billboards printed with that camera when I was shooting with that camera. So, yeah, people get a little too hung up on the numbers, the biggest and the best, that kind of stuff. So Ronaldo, I'm sorry I don't have a kind of a really good formula answer to give you there, but that's kind of where I'm at with it so far. I haven't run into a problem where I've needed to try and correct noise. And the sharpening, the only sharpening so actually, I'm sorry. You know what, Ronaldo? Time out. I left out one piece of my sharpening step. Sorry. But I did this with Nikon too. So this is not an Olympus thing. I take my raw, when I open up my raw files in Camera Raw, sorry, I've been doing this for so many years, I forgot that I do it, because I also did it with Nikon, right? So this is not because of Olympus, but it's part of my workflow. When I open up my raw file in the Camera Raw plugin, or if I'm working in Capture One, I'll do it in camera on Tether. But in Adobe, the default sharpness for both the Nikon RAW files and the Canon RAW files is 25 when you open it up in Camera Raw. I automatically take my files up to 50 in the sharpness panel. So if for you Lightroom folks, this would be in the develop section under sharpness. Instead of the default of 25, I move it up to 50. But I've been doing that for easily 10 years. I was doing it with Nikon. I'm still doing it with Olympus. So that's still a piece of my workflow. So that's not something that I'm doing because of Olympus. In that sense, there's really been no no change. So FN89, how's the lens distortion when the lens is under 50 millimeter for the Olympus OMD that you own? Lens distortion is absolutely fine. There basically is none. So people get really, really hung up on this, and there's so many misconceptions. And I won't lie to you, the only reason I haven't done a video about this is because I haven't figured out a foolproof way to make people understand, right? So you're right. I use the 45 millimeter. That's my go-to lens right now. So the Emswico 45 millimeter f1.2 Pro lens, oh my God, to die for. I love that lens. But it's still a 45 millimeter lens. So it's capable of creating distortion. Yes, absolutely. However, on a micro four thirds camera, it's the 90 millimeter equivalent on a 35, which means that I'm not getting this close. I'm backed up considerably. So I'm physically beyond the range where I'm going to get distortion. Yes, if I took that 45 millimeter lens and I decided I was going to come in and shoot like this part of somebody's face, is it going to start to give me some distortion? Absolutely. Yes, it will. But any 45 millimeter would. But because of the crop factor and the distance, it's just not an issue. Okay, so I've had no problem with it at all. And if I had a situation where I needed to physically back up a little bit more because I was afraid of potentially getting some distortion, then my second favorite Emswico lens is the 75 millimeter f1.8. That would be my go-to lens if I wanted to back things up and compress a little bit more. And in my day-to-day shooting, I use the 75 millimeter as a utility lens, meaning if I want a little bit more compression, especially if I'm adding things in the background or that kind of stuff and I really want to bring it tight together, then I'll use the lens for that purpose. Otherwise, I love the distance that the 45 millimeter puts me at in terms of being able to interact with my subject, you know, just the workflow, all of it. It's really, really beautiful lens. So, Thomas, in a new Lightroom update, default sharpening is 40. That's interesting. Cool. So I have not had a chance to play with that, so I'm not going to tell you good, bad, otherwise, change it. I would anticipate if they haven't changed the algorithms, I would still go to 50, but don't take my word for that. So I would say experiment with that. Look at what you were doing. You got to understand, guys, when we start talking about things like sharpening, there's no right or wrong. The only thing that's wrong is over sharpening, right? The only thing that's wrong is when you start to pick up fringing and you're creating like, you know, really, really horrible looking chromatic aberration. It was already there, but you're making it worse, all that kind of stuff. That's the only time sharpening is bad, right? It's generally accepted that you need to do it to some degree. It should always be the last thing that you do when you're processing your images. In other words, do it after you've sized your image. So if you're like me and you do, you know, I work in Photoshop and I create .psd files because they have all the layers, etc. I'm doing that default sharpening to set it to 50 in the develop panel. I'm not doing any other sharpening while I'm retouching that image. Even when I'm done retouching that image, I don't do any sharpening. When I resize that file and then go to save it as a JPEG, I will sharpen it before I make the JPEG. That's when I do my sharpening for display. And it's minimal. Like I said, I just use the default settings on the unsharp mask and I back it off to like between 80 and 70. That's it. Okay, real simple. So, but that's good to know, Thomas. I will have to look into that. I did not know that they changed that number. So, David, watching you shoot live was fantastic. Obviously, the camera's more capable of keeping up with you when you're shooting. Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, it was a lot of fun. So, oh, that's right. I remember talking to you about the triggers. And yeah, in fact, I actually just got 2 weeks ago, and I finally only really just got to use it. The new X Pro trigger for the Godoxes that arrived. I'll be honest with you. I have the original, you know, the $49 version. Now I have the $69 version. The $69 version's a little nicer. So I would say that, you know, for the extra $20, it's worth getting that one. But it's not like revolutionary, oh my God, like so much better. No, I mean, it basically does all the same things the $49 one does. So, yeah, anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed the talk and enjoy the system because it's pretty sweet. Really, really is. So, Jason here, sometimes use 60 Agfa Flex that my grandfather left me. Wow, okay. Black and white shots always look amazing, grain and all. Yeah, I mean, I still love a little bit of grain. I really do. The Olympus Pen F has this little feature that's actually out on the front of it. I mean, the EM1 has it too, but on the Pen F, they put it in the front. They're basically art filters. So, you know, with one switch, you can go from like whatever your standard color profile is, just like you would do in any other digital camera, but switch it over to color mode where you can adjust the colors, or even a black and white mono mode. And I'll tell you, their black and white mono mode, it's got a little secret sauce in it. It instantly takes me back to the days of Tri-X, like instantly. It's heavy on the contrast, really rich on the blacks. It's really sweet. So I will admit, when I was in New York on Monday and shooting, I did a lot of my stuff, you know, with the black and white art mode. And I've had a few people ask if I'm going to start sharing images from the Pen F. I will. My plan is probably not until sometime next week. I'm going to go ahead and set up a second Instagram channel that is just for my Pen F, because the stuff that I shoot when I'm out and about and doing that kind of stuff, it's not models. I mean, I could shoot models with that camera, and I'll probably do that as a test sometime. When I was walking around the city, I was doing a lot of abstract stuff, And for me, it's a lot of fun. It's a real good creative challenge. It's way apart from what I normally do. So I will definitely share some of that stuff coming up soon. I'm going to go ahead and set up a separate Instagram channel for it, and I'll make sure that I share that with you guys. So, Mark, if you're on a budget, which would you buy first, the camera body or the glass? Well, you kind of need both to work. I mean, so I'm assuming you already have a camera. So fill me in a little bit, Mark. What do you have now? So what camera, what lenses, and let me know what you shoot other than puppies, and then I can give you a better answer to that. Okay. Alexander, distortion comes from distance, being too close, right? Which is basically what I said. It's got to do with, you know, are you going to get too close? Working with that 2x crop factor, it eliminates that problem. So, yep, I completely agree with you there. Let's see here. Scrolling back up, I know there's a bunch of stuff that that went by that I missed. So, but can Canon match the Sony A3 for a similar price? Yeah, I don't think that it's got to be so much that it matches for price. And the reason I say that is, you know, keep in mind people have a lot of legacy Canon glass. So even if the Canon's a little bit more, but it matches the A7 III in terms of quality and features, that's not going to cause people to switch. Understand, there are a lot of photographers like me. I don't believe in putting adapters on lenses. I mean, why spend that kind of money for a camera and not put native lenses in the camera? To me, that makes no sense. You know, I don't mind putting like a Sigma or a Tamron or a Tokina lens on when they're engineered for the specific camera. But the idea of putting a lens that's engineered for one brand of camera on another camera, I totally understand it works. I totally understand Sony users do that. Sony users only do that because they were given no choice in the early days of the system. Now, of course, they have more choices. But, yeah, for me, like, that's not going to happen. I am going to invest that kind of money. I want gear that's engineered to work together by design, period. So, and I think you'll find that there's a lot of people feel that way. So even if the Canon is more than the A7 III, if it's a good camera, and if Canon is able to show, because keep in mind, people are going to be looking at two things, not just when the first ones come out for Canon and Nikon. It's not that the camera's got to be the greatest thing since Swiss cheese, and it doesn't have to beat Sony. So everybody really needs to understand now. You know, Nikon and Canon users, it's not that they got to beat Sony. I think if you get any Nikon or Canon user to be sincere with you, what they're going to explain to you is they're not so much concerned about is the first one going to be better than anything Sony has. What they're concerned about is, are Nikon and Canon committed to mirrorless technology? If they're committed, you know, again, it's like with all these Sony cameras coming out every 12 months or every 18 months, who the heck needs a new camera that often? And how much better is one over the next? It's not. And I'm not slamming Sony. Sony's brilliant because they're getting people to buy them. They're getting people to buy cameras like people buy iPhones, which is amazing. Good for them. But at the end of the day, do you need that? No. And, you know, full disclosure, iPhone 10. I'm one of those people that buys an iPhone every time the new iPhone comes out. So, I mean, I get it. Does it make my phone calls better? No, it doesn't make my phone calls any better. It does make the pictures a little better, but really, no. So, I totally understand the concept that people do it, But the fact of the matter is, you don't need it. So I don't think that Nikon and Canon users are of the mindset that if it's not the greatest mirrorless camera ever, I'm out of here. No. So I don't think the price matching and that's going to be comparable. I think what's more important is, are these companies committed? I believe they're committed to getting the mirrorless cameras out on the market, but where the real messaging has got to be is, are they building a good system? Are they building a good system that clearly has a future to it? And we already know with Nikon that it's probably going to have a whole new line of lenses. So obviously one of the big obstacles right out of the box is how many lenses are going to be available, and what are they promising in terms of having new lenses available? Because the only other option with your legacy glass is going to be put an adapter on it. Not an ideal situation. So that was kind of a big part of the tipping point for me, even with Nikon, was once the information came out about their patent filings and we saw that they, were filing patents for adapters and that kind of stuff. It's like, yep, that's it. I'm not interested in that. I'm simply not. So anyway, we shall see. Time will tell, right? Time will tell. In the meantime, it definitely makes for good conversation and debate. So, all right, so back to Mark's question about the camera stuff, whether you buy the camera body or the glass. He's got the Canon T6S. He put his money towards the glass, the 70-200 2.8, the 24-70 2.8, and the 11-24-4, all L lenses. I specialize in portraits, both studio and environmental. Well, then, Mark, I would say that when you are ready and when you have a need, two key things, with the most important of those two being the need, right? When you have a need, then yeah, you've got a good glass system, so upgrade your camera body. But if you don't have a need, then not a big deal. David Hodgkins, I love this. There's Sony mini disc memory stick Betamax Vio. Yep, I'm with you, man. I hear you. But don't say that in front of a Sony person because they get really upset when you bring that stuff up, right? They just do. So let's see, where are we at here? Back to James Madden. I'm trying to catch up with everybody that I say give me more information. He began with landscapes. He loves a good super wide angle shot. I mean, wide, 10mm, 8mm fisheye. What is the best wide angle you've had your hands on? Well, ever since my early days in photography, now keep in mind, I started as a photojournalist, right? My favorite wide angle lens for years and years and years and years was the 24mm. Keep in mind that was 35mm format, and then going to full frame Nikon, it was 24mm. Simply because as a newspaper photographer, first thing you learn, fill the frame, fill the frame, fill the frame, right? So the 24mm forced me to have to get really, really close to my subject. What that did for the viewer of my pictures is it made them feel like they were right there in the middle of what was happening. So that's why I love that. My favorite short zoom for Nikon was the 17-35. Loved that lens. The 17mm focal length on a full frame, sweet. For Olympus, now that I'm in the micro four thirds range, the 7-14, sweet lens. Really, really. It is literally my biggest frustration with that lens. I don't have enough reasons to play with it on a day-to-day basis. It's just a really, really fun focal length. So it's basically like a 14 for a 35mm comparison. It's like a 14 to 28mm lens. Really, really fun focal length to work with. So those would be kind of my my go-tos. So okay. Mark Dolce, how's the modifier series going? It's going. It's going to be a month before you see that, man. Boatload of work. I'm going to do it right. I promise you, there's nothing else out there in YouTube that is going to be as in-depth and detailed as this. It's going to take at least a month for that thing to start to hit. We're going to start with speed lights and then go to studio lights. So it's going to cover, right now I think I'm up to 42 different modifiers is what I've got on hand to work with. So yeah, there's going to be quite a bit to it. So Sato, follow up on my light emitter question a couple of weeks ago. Couldn't get a decent secondhand Sekonic 308S, so I ordered the Sekonic 308X. Yeah, that's cool. Not a problem there. The 308 is definitely a nice meter. I think you will find that it will do well for you. Okay, Gregory, just Gregory. Have you ever used a Elastolite triflector system for headshots? If so, what is your opinion on it? Because I'm thinking of making one out of PVC piping, your tried and true Walmart reflector. So Elastolite triflector system. I'm thinking there's two things running through my head right now. I'm not going to lie to you. So I want to make sure that before I give you the answer, I am going to tell you the right thing. So here, let's just, for those of us that aren't sure what that is, I'm online now. I did a quick Google search and, oh, one of these guys. Okay. No, I haven't used one. It almost reminds me of, what is it? It's Westcott's eyeliner. You know, kind of similar concept, but with three smaller, you know, panels. So, my problem with that, Gregory, I'm afraid it would start to create some rather distracting catch lights. So let me back up a little bit. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Westcott eyeliner, I'm not going to pull it up on the screen here. It's basically a big half circle, you know, reflector. Okay. So now you've all seen these, you know, three little triangles that are there, which is a little bit weird, but hey, you know, it's a reflector. The biggest problem that I have with those is that most people don't use them properly. It's literally kind of become a thing where apparently when you use that eyeliner, you feel that you have to have the bottom catch light bigger than the top catch light. Because that's usually what we see when people use that eyeliner. Like the bottom catch light is really, really hot and there's either no top catch light or it's nowhere near as bright. That's bass-ackwards. Our brains are wired to expect light to come from above. They're wired by age 2. That goes back to that sensation and perception stuff we were talking about in the beginning of the evening, okay? So, you know, just like the video that I did about not putting reflectors underneath but putting them above when you're using a reflector outside in sunlight, this to me seems kind of gimmicky. I would encourage you, Gregory, Google the idea of the Westcott eyeliner, and then don't buy one. But then go to YouTube and you'll find a bunch of DIY videos on how to make your own. And that's the only reason I haven't done one is because there's a couple really good ones out there that, you know, where people have come up with some really good solutions. And so you can do it very, very inexpensively. And you don't even need the PVC actually. So that's kind of one of the other nice things about some of the DIYs that are out there. There's no PVC needed. But I would not be thrilled about the idea of having 3 separate panels like that because it's going to create 3 separate catch lights, and so that for me would be a little bit much. So you guys are losing the video, huh? That must be something. It's not from YouTube, so it's recording straight through. So it's something that's maybe happening between you and YouTube, and you know the internet's not happy tonight. But I at least promise you on playback, if you watch videos there, we get this little health symbol here thing, and then the software that I'm using also gives me feedback on that. And yeah, we've got like almost no drop frames, and computer's not running too heavy, so it's out there. Okay, all right. Let's see here. I'm gonna scroll back up. Milos, I need help. Which battery charger to buy for 16 NIMH Edelman Pro and Amazon Basic batteries? I just use little Panasonic chargers, the little black ones. I think they also come in white. I've got a couple of those. There's tons of chargers out there, Milos. And literally, you know, pretty much all you got to do is, you know, the power of your batteries. So make sure that whatever charger you get supports that size battery. But, I use fewer and fewer. In fact, here, the one that I use, it looks like this, but black. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's got the little, you know, wall plug in the back of it. Okay, I have like 4 of the black ones, but I use AA rechargeables less and less and less. So like for like my computer keyboards and my mice and that type of stuff, I use the lesser expensive blue Eneloops as rechargeables. Like all my remote controls in my house have these, etc. So I use this charger for those. And then for my photography stuff, I have the Edelman Pro batteries, which are the black ones. They're the Panasonic versions, right? But yeah, I just go with the brand name chargers. I don't use that many. The nice part of it is, you know, on the camera side and the video side now, the batteries are getting better, but they're also more dedicated. So there's not as much stuff that's using rechargeable AA's. So I don't have as many, and I don't charge them near as much. Okay, so anyway, that's That's the deal there. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get rid of that idiot. Okay. Good. So now, let's see. Going back up. Tomas, I'm looking to get a great background for my headshots. Can you give me recommendations to go for paper or vinyl? Well, if you're going to mount it permanently, Tomas, in other words, if you've got a set place where you're going to mount it to the wall or where you're going to mount it to the ceiling, vinyl is nice because you can clean it, basically with a wet wipe, and it's more durable. It's thick. If you're planning on using that gray background on background stands, do not buy vinyl. Vinyl is much heavier. So unless you've got like hardcore stands, I mean, if you're going to be traveling with heavy duty C stands and all that, which is just a ton of weight, well, then you could use vinyl on a stand. But my rule of thumb is vinyl never goes on a stand. Vinyl's got to hang. It's got to hang on a wall or ceiling and essentially be permanently mounted. And then even then, when you do that, the vinyl usually comes on a cardboard core. To not mount it on the cardboard core, because you'll come back in about 2 days and the center will be like that. So you need to go out and purchase the metal cores and basically re-spool the vinyl background. It's worth doing because over time it's going to save you a ton of money and you can clean them. But you've got, they're heavy. So you've got, especially if you're using the 9-foot ones, you've got to have a good support system. So that's really, really important. So Atomic Media, you aren't at NAB. I'm surprised. What one new item is coming out is something you want to see or try out in hand? Nothing. NAB is basically for broadcast people. Yes, it's morphed into a lot more photography stuff. There are a ton of photography people out there right now. I'm not a gear junkie. So, I go to the 3 big ones in the U.S., Photo Plus, WPPI, and Imaging USA. I will probably, fingers crossed, be speaking for Olympus at Photo Plus in New York, but that's not set in stone yet, so that's partly me being hopeful, but there's been talks. But yeah, I have no idea. I really haven't kept track of it. I think the only thing that caught my eye, and I don't really have a need for it, I just think it's kind of neat. Blackmagic's got a nice little 4K micro 4/3 video camera out now for like $1,200, which looks really, really impressive. But I don't have a need for it, so it's not something that I'll wind up dealing with. So okay, let's see here. Scrolling back up, make sure that I catch as many of these as I can. Let's see here. Douglas Burns, I'm using the Godox 360, the Q-Flash knockoff. Any suggestions for a DIY modeling light for the light? Wow. Douglas, nothing that's gonna be elegant. That's the problem. Because just by the shape and design of that light, there's really no easy way to, kind of mount a modeling light with it. The problem with the Godox modeling lights in general, so you guys know I have the 8200s, which have modeling lights in them. And I actually, just this past weekend, I got to play with one of the new 600 Pros. I didn't buy one, but I did a personal workshop for someone, and they brought theirs. The modeling light on that was better than I expected it to be, but nowhere near as bright, for instance, as the modeling lights that are on my Honey Badgers by Interfit, right? So you could use almost anything, Douglas, but again, the challenge is it's not going to be elegant. You're going to be kind of, Rube Goldberging something together to, give yourself a light. The 360 is a flash that wasn't really designed to be used in a studio setting. It can be used in a studio setting, but it was ultimately designed really for like event people that are, working kind of run and gun on location, where, having a modeling light is not really kind of a priority in that sense. So, all right, let's see here. Waiting for you to be mine. Sorry, I had to decode that one. I've been shooting for about 5 years, trying to break into fashion. How far down the do-free shoots and TFP's road would you go? I feel I'm past needing to show them what I can do. Your thoughts. So waiting for you to be mine. Before I answer that question, and we still have a few minutes here, but give me some more feedback. So you've been shooting for 5 years. You feel like you're past having to do free stuff. So one, I want to know, where are you at? Like, where are you physically located? Two, who are you shooting for? And don't tell me you're shooting for designers and this and that. Like, if you're shooting for a designer, tell me where that designer's located and tell me their name. Okay? Give me those pieces of information, and then I'll give you some feedback about what you're doing. Because if I'm being honest, I have a feeling you don't quite understand what fashion is and how the market works. So give me some feedback, and I'll help you there. Let's see here. Do I have everything up at the top? I think I've got everything up at the top. I think I did. All right, let's get back to the bottom here because I saw some new stuff come in. Let's see. Brian Cox, I brought white velour fabric for background. When I received it from the fabric store, there was a major crease. What is the best way to get rid of the crease? Steam. So steam is always the best for material. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the velour in white, but I mean, you could. You'll notice it when I did the video about the velour material, I didn't show white. Kind of there was a reason for that. So, but yeah, I mean, steam it out. That's the best way, to deal with that. So, okay. Let's see. Jerry Andrews. I'm interested in shooting sports photography. Example, shoot action photos for high school sports and print them on site. Do you have a suggestion on software I could use, sort, organize, and print images? Wow. I don't, beyond the obvious, like, Lightroom and that kind of stuff. There is actually, Jerry, if you're looking at doing that stuff, hang on just one second here. I literally just threw away something that came in the mail the other day. So, bear with me. Marathon, sports. Let me see if I can find you the information here really quick. There is a company that I'm pretty sure it's, here we go. It's a photo lab, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Let's see if I can find it. So here, I'm just going to post this link in here. Check it out when you have a chance. And you're going to need to dig a little bit deeper, Jerry. This company is, it's Marathon Labs, but they actually have one in Las Vegas and one in Rochester, New York. Big conferences about doing sports photography. So what I would encourage you to do is do some research on their website and some Google searches about kind of software for sports and events photography. Unfortunately, Jerry, the first thing that comes to my mind, which is probably not what the big guys are using, is going to be something like Lightroom. There's got to be something that's definitely more efficient than that. So I wish I could give you a little bit more there, but I don't want to send you down a path that's not going to help. I do know that I just saw this information about Marathon, and that's exactly the kind of stuff you're talking about. So start there as a resource, and I would encourage you even reach out to them, ask them some questions. That would be a good way to start. Okay. Adam Batchelor, if I ever made a DIY canvas backdrop, could I do a video? Nope. Sorry. Won't happen ever. Mainly because I don't like canvas. It's hard to manage. It's heavy, takes up a ton of space. And it creases like crazy. So, even all this stuff, that I'm seeing that's coming in here, like Roderick typed in all this stuff, which being very helpful. Thank you, Roderick. Way too much damn work, period. I mean, that's the nice part about the velour that I use is the stuff that I use doesn't crease. So, I mean, you have to work really hard to get the stuff to crease. So, while the stuff that he got may be velour, I don't think it's the same kind of crushed velour that I get, because the stuff that I get, I keep it folded all the time. It never creases. I can pick one up that's been folded for literally like 2 years that I haven't used. There's no creases in it. It's absolutely fine. So, but yeah, the whole idea of, ironing it and then, hemming it and all that stuff, way too much work. So for that reason, yeah, canvas definitely won't be happening for me. It's just, too involved, too much effort, in that sense. Jason Madden, can I recommend an affordable setup for a 5x7 wall space? It's basically my only room in my apartment that I can turn into a portrait or headshot space. you gotta, Jason, start simple, man. I don't know. What I don't know is I don't know what your whole setup is. In other words, like, you're going to shoot in that space, but what are you shooting? You're shooting portraits, you're shooting models. What are you trying to accomplish with it? So you got to give me a little bit more, a little bit more background there. And we're getting a little tight on time. So if for some reason I don't get to all that tonight, make sure you come back with that next week, or submit that as a question. And, there's a link underneath the video. It's tog.chat/question. Okay. And I will be glad to, give you a little bit more feedback, but you got to give me more detail. Okay. What about suggestions for simple photo booth for wedding photography? Jim, no, man, no idea. Photo booth is a photo booth. It's got nothing to do with the kind of stuff that I do. So I wouldn't even begin to guess. I don't want to send you on a wild goose chase. I guarantee you, if you do a Google search on photo booths for weddings, you are going to find literally hundreds of thousands of results right now, because photo booths are the big thing. But I never profess to know everything about all photography. I'm a people shooter. I work with models. I do portraits. No idea about the photo booth stuff. So, Charles Unitas, frivolous question. The image over your right shoulder behind the red YouTube box reminds me of Patrick Nagel's art. Is it one of your photos? I noticed it a few months back and have been curious since. The image over my right shoulder. Are we talking about the? Here, we're talking about the one that's up here on the top, or are we talking about the one that's down here? Basically, every picture that you can see in the room, it's mine. So yeah, I promise you, they're all my photographs. I'm one of those really shallow people, but it goes both ways. Meaning, like, there have been people that have asked me for prints of my stuff so that they could hang it on a wall, and I found that kind of weird. Like, why would somebody want one of my pictures on a wall? It's just a thing. But at the same time, like, for me, I would never hang somebody else's artwork in my house, unless for some reason just there was something about their work and I had some personal connection to them. But otherwise, yeah, no. So yeah, no, that shot is it's mine. It's a pretty old shot. I did that back in like 2004, 2005. But yeah, that's mine. So. So let's see. Yeah, Brian, back to the crushed velour. You may not have gotten the wrong kind. You may have just gotten a cheaper brand that's a thinner type material. But my advice would be keep the iron off of it, because especially if it's like a polyester or a faux material, heat's going to potentially melt it very, very quickly. So steaming is going to be, probably the safest way to go. So, Mr. Rock Me Gameplay, what's your favorite pseudo strobe? Interfit Honey Badger, man. Hands down. Yeah. Absolutely love them. They're great. I was a Pulse buff guy for a lot of years. Love the buff strobes. You guys know that I did, the video about the Digibee. Wonderful strobe. Unfortunately, Digibees aren't available outside the country. Pulse Buff as a company has shown very little movement towards innovating since Mr. Buff passed away, which is really unfortunate. I mean, I wish them all the luck in the world. But the Interfit Honey Badger, it's available worldwide, sells for less money, has more features. Done. So yeah, the Honey Badger is it for me. So let's see here. Where else? What else? Photo booth, I got that one. So let's see. I had one more question here from early. All right, so we're gonna make this the last question for the night, gang. All right, because this one came in earlier today, and this will take me a minute. So we'll go from there. I'm early into my photography business and looking to find clients. A key element to gaining new clients is to network, but I have no talent for networking, and I end up watching from the sidelines and then kicking myself after. Do you have any tips, suggestions, or techniques that would work for wallflowers? Many thanks in advance. So, that's actually, it's a great question, and it's a very fair question. And so, keep in mind, I'm a child of the 60s, so I grew up and started to learn photography and learn the business in the 70s. And back then, the kind of feedback that you would have gotten to that question would be, suck it up, grow up, and deal with it. What's the worst that anybody can say? No, right? You've probably heard that. So honestly, that's great advice. I mean, it just is. However, that being said, here's something else I find today, that the idea of networking, now follow along because this is somewhat controversial, but if you pay attention, there are a lot of very, very famous marketing people that are writing articles and giving speeches and talking about this, and they agree with me. Networking in today's world is highly overrated. But the reason it's highly overrated is because people have forgotten what networking really means, okay? And what I mean by that is networking, especially amongst millennials, and especially amongst the generation ahead of millennials. So what's that, the Gen Xers, right? Networking has really kind of become an excuse to party, to hang out, to get food and drinks for free. And in those situations, people don't want to do business. They don't want to meet you. They don't want to hear about your business. They don't want to talk their business to you. They want to get some food. Unwind. Chill out. So the great part about social media is the networking. And social media is actually no different. The thing, people think that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook created social media. They did not create social media. Social media has been around for decades and decades and decades. It's just that social media as we know it today is not about or because of technology. Social media as we know it today, and especially as it applies to networking for a business, it's the art of using technology to be social. Done. That's it. So my advice to you for that question, I'm going to switch my screen over here. I have 2 videos that you need to watch. They're about social media. Sorry, a couple of you thought I was going to do some big rant there. No big rant. That's it. Okay. Go to my YouTube channel. Whoops. Let me switch the screen over here so you're seeing the right thing. So go to the YouTube channel. Up at the top of the page where the little magnifying glass is, type in the words marketing. Okay. Or the word marketing. Sorry. Singular. And whoops, that's not what I wanted. Why did I get that? Let's try that again. Do this one more time. Marketing. I don't know why I got another channel there. Well, that's really weird. Okay, sorry guys. Let me go to my videos. We'll do it this way. Or actually, sorry, let me go to the playlist and I'll get you the actual link. I don't know what. See, YouTube's having an issue tonight. So those of you that were having problems with the feed, it would seem like there's apparently some issues going on with YouTube tonight as well. So on my YouTube channel, there is a series of videos. I want to see if I have them on the front page here. I don't, unfortunately. There's a series of videos about marketing. 2 of them in particular are called Social Media for Photographers. There's part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the solution to your I'm a wallflower and I don't like to network. Part 1 is not going to tell you about Facebook, and it's not going to tell you about Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Part 1 is going to tell you the right philosophy to use social media. In other words, how to actually be social online. So, I mean, think about it, guys. Back in the day, back when I started, photographers that were doing well, that were making money. So, Charlie's. The reason for the question is that my local ASMP chapter does occasional networking events. I find them pretty awkward at those. But here's the problem, Charles. At a local ASMP meeting, they're photographers. So what kind of networking are you going to do? What business are you going to get out of that, right? And even if the ASMP event is bringing in local business people, you're competing with other photographers all at the same time. So that's not the kind of networking you need to do. It's not. Back in the day, so here, I'll leave you with these thoughts, guys. Back in the day, photographers are doing well. They got clients by advertising in the yellow pages, right? And that's where companies would go that were looking for photographers to photograph their products or to shoot their events. That's where brides would go to find a photographer for their wedding, etc. Now it's a completely different ballgame. If a bride's looking for a photographer, she goes to Pinterest. If somebody is looking for an architectural photographer, they're going to go to Pinterest. They may go to Instagram. People are looking for photographers and photography in a different way. Okay, so the key to it is understanding how the world has evolved. and how marketing has evolved and how photographers best can use social media. And believe me, and I will leave you these words, most photographers suck at social media. I struggle with it. I'm not going to lie. Okay? And I do better than a lot of people do. So it's not easy. I'm not saying it's a breeze, but the reason why they struggle is that they simply don't understand how to be social. And Charles, if you struggle with the in-person interactions, I would caution you about the small business events if they're going to cost you money. If you can go for free, that's great. But start out, Charles, I promise you, watch those 2 videos, okay? In fact, I just did a talk about this. The talk, you guys know that I was in New York Monday night in Tribeca. That's the talk that I did. It was social media for photographers. It's probably one of my most popular talks. I wind up doing this talk all over the country. And it's really about kind of the philosophy and the mentality. The technical stuff is easy. We can all understand the technical stuff. But it's really about the philosophy and that behind how you make social media work for you. That's the key. So, all right, gang. As usual, we are coming up on 90 minutes for a 1-hour show. So I want to thank all of you for spending a Wednesday evening with me. Remember, guys, since the beginning of the year, we have been working on a deal here. The deal you got to make me, you're going to spend 60 or 90 minutes with me. You got to promise me before you come back, 60 to 90 minutes times 2 with your camera, right? Otherwise, this YouTube stuff is not helping you. So get out there and shoot. Bunch of cool stuff coming that I can't talk about yet other than to say it's coming. Really cool stuff. Very exciting stuff. You guys may notice there hasn't been a new tutorial out for just about 3 weeks. Don't worry, I haven't stopped making videos. There's been some really cool stuff that's been coming around that I needed to dedicate some time to, get some stuff geared up for. I'll be able to share that with you very, very, very soon. Video tutorials are still where it's at. That's what I'll be doing. But I'm going to have the opportunity to do some other really, really cool stuff that I'm looking forward to being able to share with you guys because it's going to give me the ability to do a whole lot more than what I'm doing now. So have a great week. I hope to see you all next week. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.